Welcome to the QP Diaries podcast. This podcast is all about inspiring and empowering the next generation of QP professionals and future quality assurance leaders in the UK pharmaceutical industry. On every episode, I'll be speaking to QPs from across the industry, and our listeners will have the opportunity to hear their stories, their expertise, and we are going to be discussing topics to foster growth and learning to help you develop your career as a qualified person. If you're passionate about quality assurance and want to learn from some of the very best QPs and thought leaders from across the industry, then this is a podcast for you. I'm your host, Dal, founder of AssureBio, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. Mark, welcome to the QP Diaries podcast. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. Yeah, great to be here, and see you again. I only saw you on Wednesday, so nice to see you again. This time virtually.
Yeah, that's it. Only 2 days ago, we were at Making Pharma, and we had a good chat just to prepare for today. It's good to see you again, Mark, and thank you for being a guest on the podcast.
It's my pleasure.
So today we're going to be discussing your experience, of course, as a QP, and to share your journey, and also your insights as a former QP assessor. Also, your best advice to QPs, to trainee QPs who are going through that process at the moment. And additionally, we're also going to be covering the mergers and acquisitions and managing site closures from a QP's perspective, which is going to be quite interesting to our audience. But before we get into that, Mark, can you share a brief overview of your career journey as a quality assurance professional and QP, please?
Yeah, no problem at all. So, I've been in the industry just for over 30 years. So I think, like a lot of your other guests, I mean, I sort of started out in a laboratory setting. So originally in analytical development, which I did for about sort of a year and a half actually. When I was I think I was only about 18. I then went off to university, where I studied biology, and then came back for a summer job in 1994, and I stayed based out of that site until 2022. So it was a long summer job. During that time, again, I was very fortunate. That was a site that had all sort of manufacturing and testing activities. So what that allowed me to do, originally analytical development, I then moved into a quality control technical support role. And then at that time, I did that actually for, 6 or 7 years. So quite a long time, good grounding in QC. And then there was an opportunity for QP training. And as part of that, and I moved into quality assurance. So that was really interesting and broad because we're a manufacturing site. So I got involved in all the usual QA support activities for a manufacturing site. I was also doing audits. So I audited all sorts of suppliers actually all over the world, which was again exposed you to different things, different ways of doing things. I completed my QP in 2001, right? So a long time ago now, and then sort of about that sort of time, it was quite unusual. But I then went back, even though I was a QP, I then went back as QC manager, so I headed up the QC laboratory. And from there, things just sort of grew gradually over time. It wasn't planned out, but I think as opportunities come along, I think it's always good to push yourself a little bit, and great support to do that. So I then became head of quality, and then eventually ended up as senior director of quality operations. So looked after 3 UK sites. I had a business in Ireland, and also supplier quality. I had a great team, of course, who are delivering on all these areas, but heavily involved with leading those activities and all that was associated with it, including inspections, a lot of mergers and acquisitions that we'll obviously go on and talk about later. And then more recently, so 2022, I left and I've joined Jensen R+. So we are a technical and pharmaceutical consultancy business. So I lead the quality team there, and we provide services covering sort of regulatory support, quality support, so whether that's QP and RP type work, and we'll talk about some of the other areas, And reg, we do cover sort of medical devices, cosmetics, and food, and we also cover medical, so pharmacovigilance. So it's very broad,
Yeah.
and I'm kind of using my experience over the last 30 years, if you like, to help clients. So that's kind
Yeah.
of my, on the industry side, but just briefly, kind of outside of, if you like, my day job, you alluded to. So I became a QP assessor in 2005 for the Royal Society of Biology, which again has been a fantastic experience, and went on to become vice chair and chair. So I left that role at the end of last year, so it was a fixed term once you
Okay.
become vice chair and chair. So yeah, I can share some of my experience there. I also, with the British Generic Manufacturers Association, jointly established the Quality Forum. So that was a quality group set up to bring together industry and the MHRA. So I chaired that for 3 years. So again, that gave me that breadth of experience, slightly outside. You're using some of my, the day job, but you're sort of and I'll talk about the importance of the network, but it does help, drive that learning and the connection really. So yeah, it's been it's been great.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So you've been
that's the journey so far.
yeah. Still plenty more years left, I'll gather. Yeah. Thanks for sharing
Oh
that, Mark.
yes, definitely.
So you've been a QP for now for over 20 years. I assume you're still on active QP, so you're still releasing.
Yeah, I am. So I'm now named, having been named, I was a QP and an RP and an RPI previously. So I'm now a QP for our own. We hold our own MIA in Ireland. So I'm a
Yeah.
European QP. So very very kind of the EU to still allow me to be a QP in Ireland, and also for one client as well in Ireland. So yeah, no, still active in performing batch certification.
Yeah. Okay. Brilliant, Mark. Yeah. So you touched upon it there in terms of you're now a former QP assessor. However, you were the chair of the assessors as well. So going into that into a little bit more detail. So what guidance would you offer to trainee QPs who are preparing for their potential upcoming VIVA or going through that application process at the moment?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, it's a question I get asked a lot. I mean, I think it's a very big thing in people's minds, and it is a big thing. The Viva is sort of like, but actually, I think if you follow some of the basics, like everything, if you prepare well, actually the Viva should, yeah, I dare hesitate to say fun, but it's almost like training for for some sort of sporting endeavour. Actually, then the endeavour becomes easier. Um, One thing I would say is actually, I think you had an earlier Ilona who I've worked with previously. She on your podcast. I think she gave a really
Yeah,
great and very honest, personal insight into the journey, and I think that Ilona sort of spoke to that very well. So I would encourage guests to go and have a look at that. I mean, I'll talk about as an assessor based on kind of what I've seen and kind of over the many years. So I think at the start, I would say obviously your sponsor is absolutely key. And I maybe talk later about some good and bad examples from Vivas, but obviously, having a sponsor who's really engaged and understands the process and there to support you is key. I think very basic level, you need to obviously really read that study guide and keep referring to it, even when you've submitted your application. Just keep, it tells you everything. It's all there, right? It tells you what you need to know. Keep referring to that, throughout. It's a good little prompt. When you think about the Viva, all the areas that you could be questioned on. Clearly, you need to make sure you know the core modules inside out. There's that you have to really know those, and they touch, to be honest, on all areas. I think as you're going through your process, yes, you've got your modules that you'll cover, however you're doing those. But I think one of the key things is to make sure you get as much practical experience as possible, and in different dosage forms. I think this helps hugely in the Viva. You can usually tell the people who have, there's a very good theoretical knowledge, and that's fine. Early questions on law or theoretical questions, that no problem. But when you get to the scenario questions and the practical application of that knowledge, I think if you're trying to just remember that, uh, and the theoretical side of it, I think that's where I've seen people struggle. So I think I really encourage people to do that and to ask even within their own companies or through the the network, other people they meet. Just just keep asking away. But that practical experience will really help. Yeah.
Cool.
So the other thing in terms of the practical experience is something I did. When I did my QP, I had two sponsors who were really supportive. But I went to make sure, and I covered the full supply chain. So right from your sort of starting materials and active substances through to wholesale, visit to wholesaler, and even a pharmacy. Spent a day or half a day working in a pharmacy. So really get to see the full supply chain and understand some of the risks and actually connection with the patient, which is obviously what it's all about. So I think that if you can do something like that, that's incredibly useful. An obvious one, but I would say, obviously, practicing VIVA questions, in the scenarios is really important, and to do those with as many different people as possible, so you don't get too used or too comfortable to just one, to one person. And I think that's good, and challenging yourself to go into those maybe less familiar areas. And that kind of leads me on to the next point, which is I think it's very important to have a structure in how you answer during the Viva. I mean, it goes, the Viva's probably going to be an hour and a half, 2 hours tops, and so having a structure is really important. It help that you as the candidate, making sure you can understand it. So make sure you got a good structure, and also just practice and learn how to handle questions where you're less familiar or you're unsure, and making sure then that you pause. And I'll talk about some other tips shortly, but and make sure that you can work back the first principles, because I think you're not going to know everything, right? So every day you're learning. Every day I'm still learning after all this time. There's things you learn. You think, oh, we hadn't thought of that before. So there's always going to be areas you're less familiar with, but it's then how you handle those. I think clearly, there's going to be a lot of nerves. So I think, you have to find a way to channel that nervous energy. Everybody's different. However you need to do that, whether it's, you make sure you've prepared and know wherever you're going to be assessed, and you've got there early, and maybe you've had a walk, maybe it's just, breathing exercises. It's make sure, you do your exercise, you've slept well, if you can sleep, but as far as possible. And I think the other thing, and I think Phil Rose talked about this, in one of the earlier podcasts, is not everyone is successful. It's not the end of the world, right? It's really not. And I think it's like everything in life. Things don't go as planned. It's how you respond to that. And I think if you're not successful, I'd say I really encourage, take the learnings and the feedback. Go away, address those gaps, and come back again. Those are sort of high level, advice for any trainee QP in preparing the final prep for that Viva.
Yeah. No, thanks for sharing that, Mark. And you mentioned it there that not everyone is successful first time round or second time round. It is a very challenging process for an individual to go through. And I'm sure our audience will be quite interested to hear that you've been on the panel. So over the years, what are the most common downfalls that you've observed with people who've been unsuccessful?
Yeah. I mean, in terms of pass rate, a lot of people ask me what's the pass rate. I mean, it does go up and down year on year, and we've obviously gone through. We do face to face. We did virtual Vivas as well. Obviously had a gap with COVID. I mean, on average, I would say the pass rate is about 70%. So about kind of 2 out of 3 on a day. Pass. I mean, some days you have everybody pass. There have been unfortunately days where no one's been successful. But most common downfalls, I mean, I put them into fairly high level buckets. I mean, I think probably this is about demonstrating your knowledge during the Viva. It doesn't mean you can't actually do it, but obviously you have to be able to demonstrate knowledge of the study guide during the Viva. It's not a job interview. It's not, we're not a personality assessment. It's just about demonstrating your knowledge of the study guide in that situation. So I think, one of the things would be, people perhaps their inability to apply their knowledge in scenario questions. So very good at the theory, and I've had people, you ask legal duties, routine duties, they'll just rattle them off, and that's great. That's a a skill in its own, but then you start, asking people to apply that, or you'll give situations, scenarios, and people really struggle with that, because it's not, it's not just an exact thing. There's lots of information there. I think some candidates would really struggle to extrapolate the knowledge to less familiar areas, and it really throws people. So if you've come in and your background is sterols, and someone's asked you maybe a tab more of a solid oral dose question, or if you're a solid oral dose and they've asked, there's been a question that's involved a cream. Some people really struggle with that, and it's very clear in the study guide and all the guidance, you need to be able to do that. Now, we would never expect someone whose main experience is in solid oral dose to know sterols in the same way someone who's been working in sterols. However, you should know the basics, know where the risks are, and be able to explain that, and not be just sort of overwhelmed by it. So I think those are probably the if you like, two high level areas, and I think that does then link back to my earlier comment about perhaps a lack of practical experience and actually seeing things. Because in a pressured situation, I know myself, if I'm then trying to think about something I've read in a book versus something I've actually seen because I've visited, even if it was only a short visit, it just it's more cemented in my mind. So those would be the two high level areas. I mean, one thing I would say is in the joint professional bodies do publish a QP newsletter. So typically it comes out quarterly. So that will be on the Royal Society of Chemistry, Royal Society of Biology, or the Royal Pharmaceutical Society website. So in the last one, so there was a list of, if you like, the most common reasons, or the most common reasons for failure by module. So number one was roles and professional duties. Number two was the pharmaceutical quality system. 3 was formulation and processing. 4 was micro, and 5 was fifth was packaging. But I think they're all quite specific, and I'd come back to those, two sort of high level buckets. I think ultimately it's about how you can apply and demonstrate how you can apply your knowledge, in the VIVA situation.
Yeah, so the practical experience gained through the application process is quite critical then to actually walk into that VIVA and be able to demonstrate that knowledge, especially when you're in a quite high pressurized environment in those couple of hours.
Absolutely, and you're going to have 3 assessors in there. You're going to have your officer in there, and you may have an observer. That could be a trainee assessor. It could be someone from the MHRA or VMD. So it's a high pressure situation. You've got to be able to manage your state. It's your chance to demonstrate your knowledge. Obviously, as assessors, we could only assess on what you tell us. So if you can't get things out, I mean, my experience, we always would try to help unlock. If someone feels that that you can see they probably know it, but they've got a block, then perhaps you rephrase the question, answer it in a different way to try. We want people to be successful. And our job is to find out what you do know. But it's about managing that your state ultimately. I think in a high pressured environment, and for sure the practical experience helps a lot.
Yeah, well, you mentioned it before that we had an episode with Phil Rose on, and he shared his experience of failing, and he demonstrated that it's actually not the end of the road. That you can pick yourself back up again, you can go again, you can show that resilient attitude, because sometimes it just might be on the day.
Yes, absolutely. Things can happen on the day, and it depends where you are and how you respond. Maybe something hasn't gone so well, and I'll talk about some other situations that later in the podcast. But how you again maintain your state. Maybe we are I think I haven't answered that scenario as well as I would have liked. Now, can you just move on to the next one? That's done. Or does it it's then just a downhill. I've seen that. But I think the best thing is you learn from it, and you will come back better. Actually, it's like everything, and that's when you learn and grow, isn't it? When maybe things haven't gone as we've planned, and no one would choose wants to fail the VIVA, but out of it, I think the best people take that learning, like anything in life, and come back better, learn from it, and are better for it.
Yeah, absolutely, Mark. Yeah, and without naming any names, I'm sure there've also been some quite standout VIVAs which have been quite memorable. Can you share any examples of these memorable Vivas
Yeah.
that you've witnessed?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, there's been lots in the time. I mainly talk about the good ones. There are some probably standout ones that were not good, but actually you can learn for those. That's not to make fun of those. It's just actually to share that. So I mean, I'll talk about, obviously I won't talk about individuals. I'll talk about some of the things that I saw that I thought, actually that was, that was good. I mean, obviously, a really good understanding of the core modules and the key principles is, that the best people are able to do that. In the scenario questions, I think that the best candidates can quickly identify what the key issues are. You're trying, because bear in mind, you're trying to cover the whole study guide in about an hour and a half to hour and three quarters. You can't spend ages on this, right? So it's sort of high level. So the best candidates can quickly identify what the key issues are and what they need to consider and apply the principles of quality risk management. The strongest candidates, I think, will ask very good questions. So when you give it, when we're giving a scenario, you'll give part of the, maybe part of the information, and it's a great opportunity for candidates to demonstrate knowledge by the questions they ask, and that to me is usually where you start to distinguish. You can tell the people that have the practical experience because they're asking the right sort of questions, and that says, okay, you know where this is going. Again, the better ones are, candidates are able to handle less familiar scenarios. So, if their experience is one particular dosage form and we give them something else, at the end of the day, they're still, logical, structured. They also will know they're not completely flummoxed by it. They'll be able to say, well, okay, look, these are some of the concerns I've got. They can come back to some sort of first principles, I guess, of this sort of situation. So coming back and thinking, well, actually, thinking about the patient risk, thinking about any concerns, thinking about compliance risk, and also who else might they want to talk to, and where else might they want to look if they didn't know, because actually in real life you don't know everything, and actually part of the duties, you need to know when to consult with relevant experts. So I think again, strong candidates can do that. Very clear communication as well as being structured. It's very, very clear, very definite and confident, I guess, and not sort of appearing unsure. You never like to hear, well, I think, or if you're just deferring to colleagues who are going to do it, we want to know what the candidate, their view. I think candidates who have had maybe a narrow scope. So some candidates apply, it might be quite a specialised role they're in, and so you might look at the application and think, well, okay, this might be a bit of a struggle for them, but they've worked very hard to get that practical experience and through their network and visits and things. So I think again that's always good. I think, and I talked about at the start, I think those candidates who come back and have addressed previous concerns. So I can think of one particular example. Actually, it was a face-to-face Viva, and actually the person they just struggled, I think, with the lack of practical experience, and we gave that feedback. And actually, I think it was one of the first. It was the first virtual Viva, and I'd been chair with it when the person was unsuccessful, and I was chairing again. So they came back again, and the first person they're seeing on the screen was me. But actually, it was great because you could see they had really they really put the effort in to get the practical experience, and it just shone through, and it was great to see. Actually, it's probably one of the most rewarding ones. I think the better candidates always think about the patient. You're not just focused on, don't get lost in the detail. You've got to keep it high level. Always think about the patient. I think just on that, that's the good ones. I mean, the bad ones, I think, a lot of it is either nerves. I've seen that, or people just cannot handle, which is horrible. We really did try, and I know it would be the same now, actually really try to steady people down, get people to just breathe and take their time. Some people just, unfortunately, on that day, they're not able to get through that. Some people, I think it's just lack of prep, and possibly due to lack of support from sponsors. If you haven't practiced scenarios and gone through the sort of high pressured sort of situations, and you've got a lack of practical experience, I just think that will shine through, unfortunately. So yeah, there's a few high level examples there anyway.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing that, Mark. And do you believe then, obviously you mentioned it in your sort of introduction, that the sponsor is very, very critical for the trainee in terms of, okay, whether they can be passed on that day, or obviously, yeah, maybe fail, or maybe come in too overconfident and lack that practical experience.
Yeah, I know, absolutely. The sponsor plays a key role, and is ultimately deciding when you're ready to apply. And I think then of course, something can happen on the day, right? So then, okay, the sponsor's done their best, and but if someone's miles away, then actually you have to look at, why did the sponsor allow them to come through? Because
Yeah,
that's not fair
yeah,
on the candidate. It's really not. And so I think, the sponsor plays an absolutely key role in supporting them, and also sometimes that might be. And I've had to say to people, yeah, look, I know you want to go, but I don't think you're quite ready yet. These
yeah,
are the areas I'd like to see, and you need to be honest. Don't just let people go through and knowing that, oh, yeah, I don't think they're really ready. That's you've failed in your professional duties, I'm afraid there. So yeah, sponsor is key.
yeah. So that judgment and making sure that the candidate is completely 100% ready to go
Mm.
is, as you say, very critical. Okay, all right.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing that, Mark. That's going to be really valuable to
yeah, no
anyone who
problem.
potentially is leading up to the Viva this year. And taking us on to a different subject, which I mentioned in my introduction, which you thought that would be quite important to share,
Mm.
is that you've been involved in, I believe, a couple of merger and acquisitions
Mm.
during your time, also site closures during
Mm.
your career. So, can you share the reason why the role of the QP and, I suppose, a quality leader is so integral to these
Mm.
type of scenarios and projects?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. No, it's something I've been involved in a lot on both sides. Actually, being acquiring. That could be
Okay,
acquiring products or businesses. That could be manufacturing sites. Yeah. So yeah, I've been involved in that a lot actually. And Jensen actually is one of the things we do. We will help either pharmaceutical companies or sort of venture capital businesses who are looking to acquire either products or sites. We will help do the sort of due diligence for them as well. So that's it's a very, the QP does play a very important role. So just breaking it down a little bit. I mean, you've got mergers and acquisitions. You could be working on the acquiring side. So you've been asked as a QP or quality professional to support that. So there it's really about the due diligence type, so it's a world of data rooms and maybe site visits or assessing things. And I think the key thing it's a bit like an audit, but it's really trying to identify the high level risks, and it's not all the little detail, because actually I think it's probably a little bit like buying a house, probably a bit more expensive than buying a house, but probably someone wants to buy this anyway. If you found your dream house, the fact is the roof needs redoing, you're probably going to buy it anyway. So it's trying to identify the key risks, and ultimately the value, making sure that it's not, if you buy a product, make sure that it's not, tomorrow it's fine, it's going to be withdrawn, or there's loads of recalls, or I think now with things like AI coming along, that is it still going to be relevant? You've paid a lot of money for this asset, is it going to be relevant? And identifying those risks. So I think the QP definitely plays a key role with other colleagues as well, with regulatory. And that again might include site visits. So they're on the, if I flip now, so that's kind of the acquiring, and how QP is important there. And I think being acquired is obviously a time of uncertainty for everybody. So I think that you may be aware, and I've certainly been involved where I knew we were being sold, and that's happened quite a few times. And I've been part of the team that's been involved in helping with the sale of the site. So presenting information, meeting potential buyers, doing tours and all that, and having to do that sometimes maybe getting in confidence. So you it's really important you can manage your own state and obviously others, because it can be a time of uncertainty, and the QP is not immune from that, of course. I think once if you've been acquired, again, it's people, okay, what everything, what does this mean for me? Depending on who's buying you, you think, oh well, okay, this might mean like I may not have a job. site may be closed, etc., etc. I mean, so I think you've got to manage your state. I mean, focus on what you can control. I always think, do just continue to do, a good job. As a QP, obviously what you need to do is make sure that your legal and routine duties continue to be met. And obviously there are some, additional risks when a site is acquired. You may, depending on who's bought you might, it might just be more of a merger. That's fine. It might be fairly stable for a period of time. Or you might sort of see, well, actually, it's quite likely this means the site's going to be closed. So you might, with additional risks, you might want to, obviously the QP needs to think about, continue to monitor how the pharmaceutical quality system is performing, whether you need any additional controls. Clearly, you need to inform, the QP, is an interface with the MHRA, so make sure you inform the MHRA. And I think the QP is absolutely key at getting, must get involved and help shape things if you can. Usually there's probably, when two businesses have come together, there's some sort of integration plan, different parts of the business, but making sure quality are part of that, and quality are involved in the decisions, and an enabler, rather than something is done and then you find out you're out of compliance, or you're then acting as a blocker in the end. So I think a QP plays a key role, and we should really look to get involved throughout the process, and use it as a learning opportunity. I think I'll come on to that at the end, but I think you never stop learning, and I think this is just another great opportunity. And I've certainly learned through all of these, because it's not only the technical side, but different cultures and different ways of working, different systems. There's an awful lot going on when you're acquired, and just managing your own I guess physical and mental well-being, because actually for a while when you've been acquired, probably your workload's, it's not going to go down, right? You've probably got some integration type stuff, and you've still got the day job. You can't say, oh, we're being acquired, so I don't, you've still got to maintain, as I said, got to make sure that you're still meeting your all your legal requirements, and make sure the value of the asset is maintained ultimately for the buyer. I mean, if I just quickly move on, sometimes it can mean site closure, so that could either come about as a maybe really the company just wants a product, and they're just going to move that product out. It may be once companies have come together, they've got now too many sites, and they got a site that's small and really overloaded, and another site which is under capacity, and it's like, well, actually it makes sense to move this into the bigger site, and we'll close this site, which is always, on a personal level, is probably the hardest thing I've ever had to do, because you're impacting people's lives. Yes, it's business, but on a very personal level, it's people's lives and livelihood. And I think again, the QP, and quality leaders have a really key role there. I mean, yes, ultimately it's looking after people, I think, at the most basic level, and making sure everyone's okay as possible, and everyone's treated fairly, and all those things. Purely quality wise, obviously you've got to make sure your GMP requirements are being met. The quality system, you need to use that. So if you're going to close a site, there needs to be a change control somewhere which says, we're going to, and there may be other a number of change controls. There's probably an umbrella one with a number of others, and you need to monitor the pharmaceutical quality system very carefully to make sure your metrics aren't drifting, because obviously the risk is, if sites being closed, motivation drops, people leave, maybe it could even be malicious type activity. So it's a very much an area of increased risk. With that in mind, there's an obligation to inform MHRA if a site closure, and I've certainly been involved in that, and had met with MHRA, talked to them about plans, and kept them regularly updated. And we did have a closeout inspection. It's very important at the end, your final inspection. You can't have things sort of outstanding in your quality system. You'll end up with a critical deficiency. So you've got to show everything is closed, and obviously you're retaining records and where the information is going to be, because there are things that need to continue after a site is closed. It's not like, okay, well that's it, close the site, and it's there are you've got products out on the market. You need to think about all of those things. I think I said earlier, I think you need to use it as a learning experience, whilst you might not choose to go through it. And the best people that I've seen are ones that went, okay, this is happening, but they've engaged with it, because I
Okay.
think, you will learn from it. You wouldn't choose to do it. It's not nice to see, and then people go through all sorts. It's kind of the change curve, and there's all sorts of emotions that you need to manage. But I would say use it. The QP needs to be engaged, use it as a learning opportunity, stay close to people. Don't stick your head in the sand. It's gonna happen. You need to make sure it happens in the best way, way possible, and consider additional risks that might, resolve and might result from it. And the QP is right, right at the heart of it, because obviously the legal routine duties don't go away until that MIA is, deleted. You have to submit to MHRA, and that will then trigger, some additional activities. Those obligations remain. So yeah, QP is absolutely fundamental during that process. Not a nice one, but you learn a lot.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I mean, what you just described there is, as you mentioned, that it's not a scenario which people choose to go through, and you can learn quite a lot from that.
Mm.
So, going back to your career and what you've experienced, what has been your biggest learn as a QP?
Yeah, okay. Just actually, one other thing I will just say is, obviously throughout that, the communication is absolutely key with the teams from the QP. So to maintain that sort of, the integrity and the trust, that's incredibly important when you're going through a site closure, because you need to maintain that, throughout. But yeah, on to the kind of learning experience. I mean, there's many things. I don't think there's one. I think I sort of made note of it. Yeah, when I was sort of thinking about this as sort of a few areas. So I mean, I think the ability to build relationships is absolutely key. The QP is reliant on many different people. If you're manufacturing the product, testing the product, other people within the business, maybe on the commercial side. I always have very, very strong links with the commercial and financial teams. I was fortunate. I was on a site where we were all there together. That's really powerful. So we understood each other, and they come and talk. Everyone talks openly, and it's not the QP and quality is sort of, don't tell them that. You need to find a way to build that rapport, and you understand. So relationships are key. I think on a personal level, resilience. I mean, it's not an easy job. It was never an easy job, and I think it's got a lot harder with the level of expectation, and more has been added into the QP role over the years, and obviously lots of changes in legislation following Brexit. It's almost like relearning, everything again. And I say, the standards are always increasing. I think the network is absolutely critical for the QP, and that's internal. So as I've talked about other colleagues, is really, really important. And if there are issues, you want people to feel confident and comfortable to bring them to you, and know that they can talk openly and not be judged. So you don't have this kind of blame culture, because I think that just drives things completely the wrong way. So you want a good, open, quality culture built on trust and respect, but also external. So I think your QP network and other professionals that you can learn from and talk to. I think that's invaluable. I think the regulators stick close. My experience has been very, very positive with MHRA. Communicate regularly and often. That helps establish trust. I think that's really, really important. So that's something I'd really, again, great learning from me. I think also with that, your trade associations, whichever, area you're in, if you've got a trade association, do engage, and they have some very good forums and things. I've talked about the BGMA, but obviously there's ABPI. So lots of, trade associations and groups. So network really key. Keep learning. I mean, you never stop learning. Obviously, we were at making and distributing pharmaceuticals this week, and some great presentations on there. And we went to the one on AI that Martin Lush did. But there's lots of things, and I think you're always learning. Keep asking questions. You keep, if you're not sure, just keep asking. Have that inquiring mind. Look after your mental and physical well-being. I mean, good if you're just burnt out. And I know you've talked about that on previous, podcasts. However you do that, whether that's exercise, whether it's meditation, whatever works for you. But it's very easy in times of pressure. whether that's site closures or, you know, mergers and acquisitions, that those are the things that we leave out or we neglect, you know, our personal relationships. So yeah, that's incredibly important. And the other thing I think is get a you know, a mentor, someone that
Yeah.
you know you can you know, or several, you know, over the years I've had probably several, and again they yeah, that can be massively helpful, you know, as you go through your career journey as a QP, and they can help drive your learning and even you know, help get you the, you know, additional experience and be there as a sort of a support in times of, you know, in times of need, really. So yeah, those are probably some of the key learnings anyway I would pull out.
Yeah. Yeah. So it sounds like there isn't just like one just big learn within your career. It is constant. You're evolving for every year you're going on, every company you work for, and so on. And yeah,
Well,
you
and I
just have to
think,
continue that
yeah,
journey.
now with, you know, say, you know, we were at the same presentation this week, and I think with AI, the speed at which, you know, change is going to happen is going to be quicker than we can, you know, probably imagine. And you know,
Yeah.
you've got this choice then of either, you know, it's kind of engage with it, partner with it, or you know, you could ignore it or just go, oh, it's just going to happen anyway. And I think the best thing is to kind of partner with it,
Yeah.
and I think that's very important. Which means you got to keep educating yourself.
Yeah, yeah, you got to be adaptable, and
Yes.
yeah, I think that's coming around the corner, isn't it, in terms of the future and the role of a QP and how that will evolve, which we found out from that
Yeah.
presentation on
Oh, so yeah,
Wednesday.
it's incredibly exciting time because it will, you know, I think it will enable QPs to focus on the more value-adding part. So it's not just batch certification, but you know, whether it's mergers, acquisitions, whether it's development, new technologies, you know, it allows QP that time to focus on the areas where it's most needed and the biggest risks. So yeah, exciting times ahead.
Yeah, absolutely, Mark. And I have one more question for you,
Yeah, of
which
course.
is always quite an important question. Um, what is the favourite part of your job and your role as a qualified person?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and I think, you know, why I sort of went into it and the whole pharmaceutical industry and particularly the QP is I guess it's helping and helping to develop others. So either helping clients or helping members of your team and also developing people. I think that's really, really, you know, rewarding.
Yeah,
I think the continued learning, you know, I love learning about new things. You know, even going, I was in India doing audit last week, and again learn to, you know, a lot different systems, different ways of doing things. You know, and ultimately, you know, it's about patient safety. You know, you're doing
yeah,
as a QP a very important job on behalf of, you know, effectively the MHRA. You know, and you know you're there, and also on behalf of your company, but ultimately patients is making sure that patients get medicines which, you know, are safe and effective and meet required quality standards. So I think that's a great thing to be involved in. And again, a few weeks ago, I released it was an orphan drug, so it was a European launch for an orphan drug of a rare disease. And again, so that sort of thing, you know, you're making a real difference to patients' lives. So I think, yeah, those would be some of my favourite parts of being a QP.
yeah, yeah. So it comes to the core of the patient, and then of course people and
Mm.
the people that you're working with day to day, of course. So
Yeah, yeah, and I think most people, we know from previous podcasts, I think most people say the same, yeah, similar things, aren't they? Some common themes there, but yeah,
yeah, yeah. Well, you can certainly tell your passion, Mark, which has been really, really insightful for you to share all of your experiences. So no, it's valued and appreciated.
no problem. And thanks again for inviting me, Dal. It's been great. Thanks very much.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, no, thanks for being a guest, Mark. And I mean, I'm sure some of our listeners who know you or may want to get to know you may reach out. Are you happy for them to maybe contact you on LinkedIn if they have any questions for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So either, yeah, on LinkedIn is probably the best way. So yeah, I'm on there. So
Yeah.
yeah, please get in touch.
All right. Brilliant, Mark. Yeah. Well, that's it. Thanks for your time. Thanks for being a guest on the QP Diaries podcast. And yeah, you enjoy your day and your weekend.
Yeah, you too. Have a good weekend. Thanks, Dal.
All right. Thanks, Mark. Bye.
A huge thank you to our special guest and to our listeners for tuning into the QP Diaries podcast. We hope you've enjoyed the show. As the founder of AssureBio, we created the podcast to support our wider quality assurance community, which aligns to our dedicated offering as a recruitment agency to the pharmaceutical and biotechnology industry across the UK. We have over 10 years of experience exclusively focused on recruiting senior quality assurance leaders and QPs. If you want to learn more about AssureBio's recruitment services, or if you would like to be a guest on the podcast, then please don't hesitate to contact me. Thank you.